excited to have Brian Courtney with us today. Newish member?
Newish members as of July this year.
And he's going to chat to us a little bit insurance. Brian, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for your time. I understand you're really brave souls to listen to an insurance seminar at 8 a.m. on a Wednesday, but I do appreciate your time. We're going to talk about group captive insurance, which is a different way of looking at your insurance program, whether you're a company that would qualify for a group captive or you work with companies that could qualify for a group captive. You're going to learn how they work and what are the benefits of being a part of it. That being said, I want this program to be interactive. So if at all possible, could we try to avoid this?
Today, we have a similar debate over this. Anyone know what this is, class? Anyone? Anyone? Anyone seen this before? The Laffer curve. Anyone know what this says? It says that at this point.
All right, so don't turn me into Ben Stein, you know, the economics professor at Ferris Bueller. I'll try my best to keep this as interesting as possible. So a little bit about what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about the basics of captive insurance. We're going to compare the options of captive insurance. There's a number of different options. You know, there's not just one type of captive insurance program. Mostly we're going to focus on group captive insurance. It's a large part of what the Safeguard Group does. Then we're going to compare that against also traditional insurance solutions. A lot of you might, you know, be familiar with traditional insurance and how that works. But we're going to look at how captive works in comparison to that and why captives could be a better solution for either your company or some of your clients. I'm also going to take you through some claims examples, how the premium is funded, how claims work, because that's a big part of this, and what are the financial requirements and the membership obligations of getting into a group captive. Last, I'm going to finish with some case studies, actual Safeguard clients that have gone into a group captive and the successes that they've had since being a member. So what is a captive? A captive is an insurance company that provides insurance to and is controlled by their owners. So as a member of a group captive, you become a part owner of an insurance company, and that insurance company is going to provide insurance to the members. That's the benefit of being in a captive. You're vested in your own success. Right now, if you're in a traditional insurance product, you're paying a premium and ceding 100% of your risk to the insurance company. If you do not have a claim, they keep all of the profit. In a group captive, you cede a portion of the risk to your own insurance company. And if there's a profit at the end of the year, that profit gets returned back to you in the form of a dividend. So there's different types of captives, all right? And I said we're going to talk about group captives in a minute, but single parent captives, that's typically what you would see like a Comcast. They have their own insurance company that they're providing insurance to for a number of different risks. Rent-a-captive is a type of insurance company that you go out and you rent the paper from an insurance company. So Travelers or Chubb has an insurance company, and they may allow you to have access to their claims people, their risk control people, their underwriting team, but you pay a premium for that cost, and you don't get as much of a reward in the underwriting profit by renting that. Agency captive is a captive that's owned by an agent like the Safeguard Group. We do not we do not have an agency captive because we believe that that's not in the best interest of our clients. Agency captive is owned by us, so if we put a client into an agency captive and there's underwriting profit at the end of the year, the agent would make that profit. We want that profit to go back to our clients, and that's why we focus on group captives. So there's two different types of group captives. There's homogeneous and there's heterogeneous. Homogeneous is industry-like, so roofers or general contractors could all be in a group captive. Heterogeneous could be a mix of different businesses, whether it be healthcare or manufacturing or distribution or construction. That would be a heterogeneous captive. Can I skip the slide? Sorry. Okay. So what are some of the benefits? Number one, you have control over your insurance destiny. How many of you right now with your either your homeowners or your auto insurance where you haven't had any claims, how many have seen an increase in their insurance rates over the last couple of years? All of you, right? Why is that? Well, the market conditions are dictating that losses are exceeding the premiums that they're collecting, and they're not getting that investment back, in the stocks and bonds that they invest their money in, the premium in. So you are insulated from these industry conditions by being in a group captive. They also give you multi-state capabilities because you're underwriting and you're using paper from an insurance company. So we look for companies that are licensed in all 50 states. So if you have multiple different locations, you can be covered in a group captive. Because you own the insurance company, you can also address any type of coverage or administration issues that might not be available in the traditional marketplace. It also improves cash flow. You're going to see how much cash can come back to you by having good loss experience. And that is in the form of underwriting profits and the interest income that you have. Because you're incentivized to reduce costs and get more underwriting profit, the members look to negotiate better terms, whether it be negotiating terms for a third-party administrator, to manage the claims, also to the actuarial services or the reinsurers that sit in excess of the captive. They negotiate these things on behalf of the members, and that helps reduce costs for your insurance program. So let's look at, yes, please. I want interruptions. Thank you. Go back a slide. Yes. So improved risk management is an incentive, right? So right now in a traditional insurance product, there is little incentive for you to reduce your claims. Now, granted, you will pay less than most of your peers if you do practice good safety or use contractual risk transfer, but the underwriting profit is not there, right? Because you're ceding 100% of your risk to the insurance company, and they're keeping all the profit should there not be any claims. And because there's an incentive, the members are looking to protect the investment. And because they're looking to protect the investment, they're trying to build best practices so claims do not occur. Does that answer your question? Yeah. Okay, great. So what we're starting to see now is alternatives are starting to exceed traditional insurance solutions. So the bottom there, it represents what you typically are accustomed to, which is Travelers, Chubb, and nothing against these companies, but they're representing a smaller share of the overall risk pool. So self-insured programs, captives, and risk retention groups are making up a large part of that. So what does this mean? It means the best risks are leaving the marketplace and they're never coming back. And those that are in the traditional insurance pool, they're going to be the victim of adverse selection because the best-in-class companies are not buying traditional insurance anymore. They're going into group captives. And this provides no long-term control over your insurance costs. So how do you gain control? So let's look at the three methods of managing risk. I talked about it already. Conventional insurance, transfer all of your losses to the insurance company. You could self-insure, okay, which we would not recommend because self-insuring could potentially bankrupt a company, right? One claim could wipe you out. The best way is through risk management and group captives, where you are retaining your predictable losses and then you're transferring your catastrophic losses to a reinsurer. And we're going to show you how that's structured. I'm having a hard time with this thing. So this is a conventional model. So your dollar of premium is based on what? The industry rates. So rates go up, rates go down. That's going to be the premium that you pay. That goes to an insurance company. And then they spend, on average, 45 cents on that dollar for operating expenses. So what are you paying for? You're paying for their marketing, you're paying for their real estate, you're paying for their actuarial services, their risk control, their claims, you name it, you're paying for that with every dollar, 45 cents, leaving 55 cents on the dollar left over to do what? Fund claims, right? So who gets the money if the operating costs are decreased? Who gets the investment income? Who gets the money if the claims are lower? Not you. It's them. They keep that. All right. So let's look at the captive model. The captive model is different. The captive model is based on your historical losses, your individual loss experience, not the industry averages. You're not put into an underwriting box. They look at your data and they determine what those rates are. And historically, they're less than what you would pay in traditional insurance. So automatically out of the gate, you should be saving money by going into a group captive. 9 times out of 10, you're going to pay less going into a group captive than you are traditional insurance. Nice little picture there. Most of the captives that we represent are domiciled in the Cayman Islands. All right. So that money goes down to the company, and 32 cents to 42 cents of every dollar goes towards the operating costs that we talked about, leaving a larger pool of money to pay for claims. Why is that important? Because that is where you can get a greater return on your investment. The operating cost is fixed cost. It goes out the window. Those are things that all members pay. The variable cost is in the claims fund. So if you, again, asking the same question, you get to keep the money if you lower the operating costs, if you lower your claims costs, and you get to keep your own investment income. Questions on that? Yes, sir. A larger pool of its. So, the larger premium is based on his industry statistics, averages, underwriting box. So obviously there's going to be more premium going in, but most of that premium is being set aside to pay for the operating expenses. So having less premium going in, I think I'm answering your question. You kind of had me, but having less premium going in on a captive is based on historical losses, but you're going to have your operating costs are going to be lower. So does that answer your question? Okay. Yes, sir. Yeah. Yeah. So what you're describing is what we call an 831B captive or micro captive, which is on the IRS Dirty Dozen list. That's not what this is. This is group captive. That's in sharing risk. Excuse me? Yeah, but that would be in the 831B sector. Yeah. These are not 831B captives. Yes. Yes. Yes.
Talk about that, this is the flip side of spreading.
Sure.
You're concentrating. How are we getting that?
Yeah. So you in the next couple slides, we're gonna hit on that for sure. Yes. So it would be a business or an organization that has enough premium where it makes sense to go into a group captive. And I'm going to get into kind of like minimum premiums where this makes sense. A lot of small businesses may not qualify for this. Some lines of coverage may not qualify for this. There's only a few lines of coverage that qualify for this. Yeah. Any other questions? These are all great questions. So we talked about this, and but this is, why costs are lower by being part of a group captive. So let's look at a sample model. So the lines of coverage that are going to be covered in a group captive, there's only really 3 lines, and these are the more predictable lines of coverage. So we wouldn't put an umbrella policy in there because that could be a catastrophic loss. So it's typically it's general liability, workers' comp, and business auto. Those are the only 3 lines of coverage that go into a group captive. Sometimes it could be 1 line of those 3 lines of coverage or 2 lines, but these are the 3 lines that we focus on the most. So this is how it works. The members retain the first 300,000 of any one claim. Now that retention can go up based on the size of captives. So there's a number of different captives. Some have a $500,000 retention. Some have a $350,000 or $400,000 retention. But for illustrative purposes here today, we're going to use 300,000. So the members are going to retain the first 300,000 of any one claim. And then in excess of 300,000, reinsurance is going to be purchased above the $300,000 retention. We would still purchase traditional insurance for umbrella coverage. So you may have a contractor client that buys $1 million of general liability coverage, but needs $10 million for their contracts. They would buy a traditional insurance umbrella policy that sits over the general liability policy. They also include what they call basket and clash coverage. So basket coverage protects the captive against when 2 lines of coverage are triggered on the same claim. So let's use an auto accident involving an employee as an example. The employee gets injured on the job, but they also get involved in an auto accident. Instead of treating those as 2 separate claims, which happens in the traditional insurance world, they're going to treat that as 1 claim. So the captive is only going to retain the first 300,000 of that claim. Clash coverage is when 2 members are involved in the same claim. Again, you could have two contractors on the job site get involved in an auto accident. They're going to treat that as 1 claim in the captive world. So I'm going to use a funding structure as an example. So let's just say you have a client or your business that pays $350,000 a year in general liability, workers' comp, and auto insurance. They're going to break that out into 2 different buckets. One is going to be your operating costs, which we talked about, which should be a little bit lower than what you would see in traditional insurance. The next is going to be in your loss forecast, and they're going to break that out into 2 separate funds. We're going to talk about A fund and we're going to talk about B fund in a minute. The AROs are your taxes and fees. They're typical in every insurance program. I zeroed that out just for illustrative purposes, but the taxes and fees are based on a percentage of premium. So all in, you're paying $350,000. So if you look at this sample member, the A fund is your frequency layer. Those are your frequency of claims. And you're going to fund up to the first 100,000 of that. The next 200,000 is going to be your B funder, which is your shock loss layer. That's where the risk is shared amongst the members, right? So most of your premium is going to be in your A fund. Another smaller portion is going to be in your B fund. Anything in excess of 300,000 is going to be ceded to a reinsurer. Everybody follow me thus far? Okay. So let's give a typical claims example for one of our clients that has good loss history. This is a typical claims year. So you have a $130,000 balance in your A fund, a $100,000 balance in your B fund, and you have $30,000 of total claims less than 100,000. This is how it works. You subtract $30,000 of total claims, that should say 100,000, excuse me, but of total claims less than 100,000. That gives you a remaining balance of 100,000 in your A fund. And if you look at that claim year, once it closes out, you paid in 350,000. You had 100,000 left in your A fund. You had 100,000 left in your B fund. You gained a little bit of investment income on your premium, and you're going to get $205,000 back in return when that claim year closes out. Pretty awesome, right? So if you're a company that pays $350,000 a year and you're going to get, and you think by practicing good loss, claims management and loss control, you can potentially get $205,000 in return, you would sign up for that any day of the week. Phil. So that is in the operating costs. So if you remember, yeah, so that would be in the operating costs. So this is just the loss funds. All right, so yes.
Like risk together, or is it one bad apple, one destroys the whole?
No, so and you're going to get into the next slide is like great segue, number one. But yes, you can group companies together. So nobody really wants to be with a commercial roofer. Nothing, there are no roofers in here, right? But nobody really wants to join with commercial roofers. So commercial roofers have come together and formed their own captive. That's a homogeneous captive. So yes, to answer your question, but this is all fine and dandy when we have a bad claim, when we have a good claim year. What happens when we have that $1 million claim? How's that going to hurt us? And you'll see in the next slide, we're going to show that $1 million catastrophic claim, big claim. If that happens in the traditional insurance marketplace, how do you think that's going to impact your premium the next year? Not good. Claims are going to go up. So 100,000 out of your A fund, remaining balance 30. The first 100, the next part of this is you have a $200,000 that you have to, accumulate in the B fund, of which we only are contributing $100,000 of that. So that leaves us with a deficit of 200,000, right? So 200,000 has to be funded. We're only contributing $100,000 is left over. But before we share that with the other members, right? We're going to balance out our A fund. We're going to wipe out our A fund and we're going to share 70 grand. You didn't pay anything additional with that $1 million claim. This program responded exactly how it was designed to respond. Right? You didn't pay any additional. Now, the critics will say, well, yeah, but I caused risk sharing to other members, right? They're causing risk sharing to me too. So I'm going to have to pay for somebody else's losses. Is that correct? And the answer is, yeah, it's insurance. It has to be risk sharing. Here's the kicker. You know who you're risk sharing with, number one, because all the members know each other. So and you have created standards by staying in the captive. And right now, everybody is sharing in everybody else's losses. Why does your homeowner's insurance go up? Because you're paying for Florida, right? You're paying for California. So we all share in risk. But now you know who you're sharing risk with. You know who you're in bed with. And you can set standards by saying, we need you to do X, Y, and Z in order to stay a member here. You don't have that control in a traditional insurance product. This was a one-time claim. The first example was like an aggregate of $30,000 of claims, less than 100,000. This was $1 million pop, just one claim. That would add to yeah. And the segue is great because I'm going to show how you can get actually hurt in a group captive in the next one. So now you have $205,000 of claims, but they're all less than 100,000. So all the claims are going to hit your A fund. None of it is going to hit your B fund. So you're going to have a deficit of 75,000 in your A fund. You can't take it out of the B fund. Why? See, it's a shared fund, right? That has to be set aside to share amongst the member. So they're going to adjust your premium by 75,000 to get you back to zero. And that is going to be paid over the course of the next 3 years in quarterly installments. So you paid $350,000 in premium, and then over the next 3 years, they're going to add that back to your premium. Now, the argument is, well, I could get hurt by being in a group captive. Again, I would argue if you're hitting the captive with those level of claims, what is the traditional insurance market going to do to you? They're going to do the same thing. They're just going to give you a premium increase, right? And you have no control over that. At least you know what your costs are and you can budget for it. Yes, I'm just making sure I'm good on time. Yeah. So each claim year has to stand on its own. So you can't pull funds from one claim year to the next. The total premium there would be 350,000 plus another, yes. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So there are collateral requirements because that creates that member-to-member obligation, right? So you can do this in the form of cash or a letter of credit. Most of our clients use cash because they can invest that cash in the captive investors fund and gain interest on that money. Again, it creates that member-to-member obligation. So you don't go in year one, you hit the captive with a whole bunch of claims, and then you're like, forget it, I'm out. Like, this is not for me. Well, we need to have that money set aside to meet your ongoing obligations because it takes several years for claims years to close out. It also capitalizes the captive and it creates the collateralizing policy issuer. So you will get a policy from an insurance company like AIG or Hartford. That's the paper that it's going to be written on. And they're typically also the reinsurer that sits in excess of the captive. Yes.
I was priced out insurance to regular insurance company captive. Would the premiums be the same, and this would just be a benefit to captive that I could possibly get some of my premium back, or is there a differential or lower cost?
It usually is about the same. It might be slightly less in a captive going in. Sometimes it's a little bit more, depending on your historical losses. So the answer is maybe. More often than not, when we're putting somebody into a group captive, the costs are significantly less because they're showing that they're a good loss experience and they're not put in that underwriting box. So how is the collateral accumulated? It's 2/3 your A fund premium, average A fund premium over 3 years. So 2 times your A fund. So this is $260,000 of collateral set aside to meet, create that member-to-member obligation. Now, this could be in the form of a letter of credit, but as I said, most people use cash, and it's an asset that sits on your balance sheet. It's not an expense. Yes, you have to take money out of the company to do this, but that is gaining investment income, to your benefit. So, a couple case studies. Here's a warehousing company. They had a 5-year loss ratio of like 380% when they went in. They were getting 15% increases based on their historical losses. And we looked at a captive for them. It was a little bit less than the expiring premium for the traditional. And 6 years in the captive, they've accumulated $1.4 million in equity. That's money coming back to the company.
So they pay more attention to the risks after they join the captive as well.
Oh yeah. Because they see where the dollars are going, right? When you start seeing like you can make real money back, and typically it takes 5 to 6 years for claims years to close out. But you start getting partial distributions in year 3 and then 4. So once you close claims years out, they start stacking on each other. Yes. Yeah, so we actually had this happen with one of my commercial roofers. They sold the company to a much larger company, and they just the shares were in the company name and the owners of that company. So they just transitioned the shares to the acquiring entity. it was interesting because the acquiring entity was in a traditional insurance program. Our client was in a captive. They didn't want to bring them into their insurance program. They wanted to keep them separate. Why? It was making a ton of money. So they just wanted to take over that insurance program and start raking in the dough with that equity. Yes.
Is it really like rating system? And some of these industries have pretty defined metrics that one kind of this. I'm thinking of banks, capital ratios. Is there ratings or regulations that say that capital is the right amount of capital for the workers business or whatever?
So the answer really is no, because again, it's a non-traditional insurance program, so it's not going to be rated by AM Best or Standard & Poor. However, when contractors are bidding on jobs, one of the requirements may be that they need like an A-rated carrier. Well, you're getting a Hartford or a Chubb or an AIG as the paper that it's written on. So unless you tell that the people that are requiring it that you're in a captive, and it's also reinsured by the insurance company, so you are getting a rated paper. So that like I guess in a roundabout way, it is rated because you're getting A-rated companies reinsuring it. All you're doing is financing the risk differently. You're taking more risks so you can get a greater reward. This was a general contractor. We replaced a 56-year relationship. So he was buying traditional insurance year after year after year after year. We came in and presented him a captive. What happened to the incumbent broker and the incumbent insurance company? As soon as they saw that they were getting beat, what did they do? Lowered the price. He was frustrated with the volatility of the marketplace. It just basically spelled out why he was going to captive, because like you only moved the premium down because you were going to lose the business. So he went in and he's been crushing it, with his insurance program. This is a family business. They hit the captive with a $500,000 work comp claim weeks into binding coverage. And think about it from that perspective. You're placing a lot of trust in a different way of buying insurance, and you hit the captive with $500,000 right out of the gate. Their reaction was like, oh my God, I made a mistake. Get me out of this, right? But we had to talk them off the ledge and say, this is how it's designed to work. And trust us, this is not going to impact you going forward. And it was true. Most of that claim was ceded to a reinsurer. Their increase didn't go up that dramatically. Their loss funds didn't go up that dramatically. And they've been one of our best clients since. So just some other examples. Commercial roofers. We have about 15, 16, maybe 17 commercial roofers across the country. The bid rates in Pennsylvania for a roofer is $20 now in traditional. We're coming in at $6 to $8 for their bid rates. Think about how competitive they can get on jobs, right? Here's another one. Masonry contractor is paying $382 per unit for medium and heavy trucks. You know what we call that in the insurance industry? We call those widow makers, right? Because if you get in an auto accident with a heavy, good luck. Hopefully you survive. They're paying $382. I guarantee anybody in this room is not paying $382 for their personal insurance right now. They're just not. Commercial real estate, food distributors, again, lower rates being in the non-traditional captive solutions. So what is an ideal captive prospect? I try to narrow this down a little bit, but these are the typical type of industries that we're working with. Maybe not a dynamite manufacturer or somebody like that, but manufacturing, distribution, healthcare, construction, those are typical clients of ours. It usually starts about $100,000 in casualty premium. Then it's industry specific. So commercial roofers might be minimum premium 175. But on average, your mid-sized companies, $100,000 is a good starting point. You have to have good loss ratio over a 5-year period. You show financial stability, ability to fund claims, and show solid risk management controls. Phil.
Walk us through comparisons between traditional insurance and captive.
Yes.
Benefits by going to captive.
Yep.
Are there opportunities for you to keep new business of clients they already be in the captive all captive the same, or is it value add?
Yeah, so not all captives are built the same. As I mentioned, like if they're in an agency captive, they're not getting any of the underwriting profit. If they're in a group captive, it's really hard to pull somebody out of a group captive to go to another group captive. And the reason being is you've already made a commitment to being an owner of an insurance company, right? A part owner of an insurance company. So people don't typically compete against themselves, right? Now, that being said, we have taken over accounts that are currently in group captives because there's other things that we bring to the table, like in-house claims management, in-house risk control that can help lower claims costs so they can protect their investment. So if they're not getting that from their broker, they might be able to get it from us, and we can provide that value add. So they're staying in their own group captive, but they're working with us instead of another broker. And I didn't put you to sleep, and I finished at 9 o'clock. So, thank you.